Hey listeners, did you know that Yogi Triathlete offers endurance coaching for body and mind? We offer personalized training plans for endurance sports, wellness and mindset, nutrition and recovery guidance, and race preparation and strategy, all within the supportive community of Team Yogi Triathlete. So if you're ready to conquer your fitness goals and push your limits, our endurance coaches are ready to guide you on the journey to peak performance. Go to yogitriathlete.com today to set up your free 30-minute discovery call and embrace a future of strength, stamina, and achievement. Your goals, our experience, the perfect match for unstoppable success.
Any words for anyone who says, I'd really love to do that, but, I'm 42 or I'm 37 or I'm 55 and I don't know if I can do it. Like, what do you have to say to kind of shake them out of that mindset?
I say that's a bunch of bullshit, honestly. I mean,
Perfect.
I've done more in my 40s than I did in my previous 3 decades. So it's just a limit you put on yourself. If you don't put those limits on yourself, then you can accomplish all kinds of stuff. I hear that stuff from a lot of my coworkers and I say, just take a look at what I've done. Like, I didn't start where I am now. It took years to get to this point, but no excuses.
Welcome to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, and we're fired up to have ultrarunner Jake Jackson with us today. We initially reached out to Jake via Squirrel's Nut Butter founder Chris Thornley, who without hesitation recommended we reach out to our fellow SNB adventure teammate for an interview following Cocodona 250. And so here we are. Jake is a dad of 3, husband, full-time professional with UPS, and a former smoker-partier who realized alongside his wife that they needed to adopt a healthier lifestyle. So they traded their cigarettes for running shoes. And after road running and finding success as a fast runner, Jake turned to the trails. His ultra sign-up CV is long, reporting his first trail race in October of 2014, although he had already been lacing up his shoes for quite some time at that point. According to his posts during and following the Cocodona 250, Jake's first 200-mile plus race, it was the hardest thing he had ever done and the place where he learned the most about himself. He walked away with a laundry list of things he could have done better, and that's a good thing because he's already signed up to go back next year. Jake has twice represented Team USA in the 24-hour World Championships. He's been last man standing at a last man standing race. He's taken wins and stood on the podium countless times. He's grinded the miles and managed to get it all in despite working full-time, being a dad, and giving space to his wife, Missy, to hit the trails and get in her training as well. Jake is coming off the win at the Nanny Goat 12-hour, which was just 2 weeks after Cocodona. And as of today, he's days away from the San Diego 100. He's been pinned with the reputation of positivity and lifting others up along the way, and we can't wait to dive in. Jake Jackson, happy birthday, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much. Really excited to talk to you guys. That was quite the introduction, so thank you.
I was going to say happy birthday to you, too. What a way to celebrate. Thank you for being here with us. I was watching one of your reels, I think it was from this morning, and you have quite a lot going on today. One of the things that you mentioned was that you're going to review maybe a movie that's coming out. Can you kind of give us some insight into that, or a documentary?
My UPS, where I've been working there for 20-something years now, they got a hold of my story running the World Championships 24-hour last year. And so they've been putting together a little bit of a promotional thing for just... I work as a feeder driver, which is driving the big rigs. They're doing some promotional work towards that, and then just basically sharing my story on my build up and how my race went in Taipei, Taiwan last year. So that hopefully I get to actually check out the video later on today, and hopefully it all looks pretty cool and be able to share that with everybody soon.
And the people that I heard you talk about this on a podcast, the people that you work with, they're always like so shocked when you tell them like what you're doing, and they're like, just it blows their mind. And for you, it must seem like it's just part of your day. It's part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, truck drivers in general have a pretty bad, image. Most of them don't eat very well. We don't get much exercise because of the long hours driving. But UPS has always been a company that promotes our well-being and staying healthy both mentally and physically. So one of the guys who is on the safety team there reached out to the higher ups, and yeah, they were interested in my story. And it's always funny when we have our pre-work meetings. I'm always like the Mr. Nutrition, Mr. Healthy guy that everybody goes to get tips, and which is great. I love sharing positive message to everybody at my work. And some of them have actually come up after the meetings and said, I really need to get back into running. What do I need to do to get there? And I first thing I tell them is, don't look what I'm doing is like where you're going to get to over a year. It took me very long time to get to this point. So yeah, just trying to get them out the door every once in a while. Get a couple miles in every, couple days is a great start. So
the trickle effect is real, and it's like you're not doing anything more than just being who you are and doing things that you love and working and being a dad and all of that. And so has any of these kind of like little hits of like, oh, what, I got to get back into running, or, I need to eat better. Have you seen any of that turn into a trickle effect where someone has made like a sustainable shift in their life? Because we all get inspired, but it's like, it's that inspiration doesn't really change anything. We have to take that action. Have you seen anything that has come, maybe work or even just outside of that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because most people, especially at my work, they see what I do, and most of them feel a little bit intimidated coming up to somebody who runs as much as I do. And I'm up early in the morning, and I get the interest definitely. And I haven't personally heard any stories of anybody coming back later, months later, and saying I accomplished this. But there has been one guy. There was somebody that I met at a race. I didn't have any idea that he worked at the same facility that I work at. We work opposite hours. He works at night and I work in the day. And he was like, yeah, I just started doing 5Ks, and he was actually running them with his son, I believe. So I guess that would definitely be one instance. But yeah, I mean, over the past couple years, I've kind of made it a focus to get on the social media channels, Instagram primarily, and, spread my story. And I get messages, DMs all the time of saying that they're doing their first ultra or first 5K. And I love hearing stuff like that from people that I've never met before. And in some small way, I've inspired them to try to, emulate some of the things that I do. So, yeah.
You mentioned getting up early. How do you get up early? Because people are listening to this and they're like, I can't get up early and do my run. Like, I'm going to hit the snooze button. What is it that you've connected with?
I've always been an early morning person anyways. Typically on the weekends, I'm up before the sun comes up without the alarm clock. So it's always been pretty kind of easy. But I mean, I start work at around 9:15 every day, and I get off late in the evening. And, when you don't have a choice to get up early to get whatever workout you're doing, it makes it a lot easier. But, depending on the time of year when the sun comes up, or, there's mornings where I'm out there just running the entire time in the dark all by myself. And I don't know. I like to say, you don't make any excuses, you just get it done. When you don't have a choice, it makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just simple. It's just get up and get it done, or don't get it done, and,
right.
And then live with how that feels, which I don't think that feels very good. Let's dive a little bit into, well, not a little bit, let's dive into Cocodona 250. So, you had posted your 4 months of mileage leading into the race. In January, you ran 387.05 miles, February, 446.91 miles, March, 538.36 miles, and in April, 448.2 miles. And you had said that it wasn't like the most conventional kind of build into it, but that you had fun and you were with community, and that perhaps is even more important than following something that makes a lot of sense on paper. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, why was that build up not so conventional?
I think the biggest thing was, I like to race a lot, probably more than most people. And, I had been coached for several years, and it was a typical, 4-month build to a race. You race, you take a period of time off, then you build up for the next race. And there are definite benefits to doing that. But for me, I've kind of gotten to a place with my running where the spot that I finish in and the time I finish in seem to be a little bit less of a priority. And so, being able to race more frequently and not necessarily giving 100% at every single race, that's just something I enjoy doing. I like being around the community. I like the racing. I don't typically have typical weekly workouts where I'm doing like a speed work or, hills. I just typically go out and run whatever I feel, whatever feels good at the time. And to be able to sprinkle in some races on the weekends to get some of those long runs in, I think it's key just in preparation for a race. You get to put yourself in those race day situations to see how your body reacts to certain things. And that no coach would probably look at the 4 months leading up to Cocodona and say, we need to copy this at all. I think, just the older I get too, I think I think the biggest reason I got into ultra running is to see what my body is capable of. And I've gotten to a point where, doing those 4-month builds, I know I can do them. I know I can finish 100 miles. And I mean, that's primarily the biggest reason why I signed up for Cocodona in the first place, because I've never run that long, over that many days. And I always try to make the training as fun as possible, because if it's not, I like to say that the race is the celebration of all the training. And if you didn't have any fun during the training leading up to the race, you're probably not going to have that much fun at the race anyway. So that's the biggest reason I race as much as I do. And I just like to mix it up, getting up in the mountains, getting on the looped courses, doing FKTs. I like throwing it all in there. It just keeps it fun.
How big a piece, because I guess they are connected. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg, like getting fit from doing all the running, but also training the mind to understand that you can do all this running when it's a plan that most often you would not prescribe, but you're finding out through your mind that it's completely doable and beyond. Like, how much of it is mindset training?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been, I could get really physically fit, but for whatever reason, when it would come to race day, if I didn't have some kind of race or some hard push in between on the buildup, I would almost lose the mental strength. So I kind of see it as if I'm racing more, I'm putting myself in those mentally compromised situations more often so I can remember how it feels when I get to a certain point where things suck or things hurt. And I'll be like, okay, well, 3 or 4 weeks ago, you were in the same exact spot. You can get through it. So just keep going. I would definitely say ultra running is definitely way more mental than physical. Once you get to a certain level of, physical fitness, your body's just going to do it. It's your mind that's going to tell your body to do it, not the other way around.
Yeah. So you signed up for Cocodona because this was big, right? Like, you can do last man standing. You can do 24-hour, 12-hour, 100-mile, 100K. Not that we assume that it's always in the bag, right? Because you never know what's going to happen on race day. Although if you look at your ultra sign up, there's not many DNFs at all, if maybe one. Yeah, there's one. So, okay, maybe Jake is the exception. But so tell us about like race morning, darkness, about to embark on something that you haven't done before. So going into that unknown of something that honestly, like, it's so big, it's so much bigger than 100-mile that you don't know if you're going to be able to do it. Can you take us there? Do you remember?
Yeah. My whole Cocodona story started, 4 years ago when they first introduced it. And I had watched the live stream every single year leading up to this year. And every year I think I told myself, maybe next year. And then when next year came around, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to tackle something that big. And then finally at the end of last year, I said, I'm definitely doing this. No matter what, I'm going to do it. And Yeah, that morning I had my two good friends who were there to document and crew and pace me some. And we were just standing at the start line, and the start ended up getting a little bit delayed because they were having trouble getting out the spot trackers to all the runners on time. So when they said it was going to get pushed back 10 minutes, you just feel everybody just groan because we all wanted to just get this thing started. Something that we'd all been thinking about for God knows how long, since probably last year for some of them. And yeah, when they finally said go, it was kind of just like a big exhale and like, okay, we're here now. This is what we're doing for however many days. Let's just go and see what happens. So yeah, it was super exciting. I always like to start right there on the starting line, and I had never been to a race that had that many photographers and people documenting and crew, and so it was really kind of a surreal moment for me.
Now, you don't start running from the start, or do you? Like for 250 miles?
Yeah, I mean, it starts out on probably a 50-yard just flat trail before we actually got up in the mountains. And I don't know if you've seen any of the videos, but some of those Congo lines can get really, really long. So a lot of the top runners, we were like kind of fighting to get up there before we got stuck behind anybody. And yeah, I'm sure for the first several miles, all of us were probably going harder than we probably should have, just to stay in front of everybody and not lose too many spots.
So tell us about why it was the hardest thing you had ever done.
I think the thing that scared me the most was the sleep aspect. I had done one 48-hour race, but it was indoors on a track. So completely different situation. I did sleep a little bit during that race, but I think the multi-day thing and trying to figure out how you're going to feel 2 days into a race was a little bit daunting to me. You don't know what your stomach's going to be doing. You don't know how your feet are going to feel that late into a race. And it was funny because my crew, they kept asking me in the weeks before, can you give us some kind of splits? And I kept telling them, I don't know how I'm going to feel in day 2. I know how I can, guess how I'm going to feel up to about 100 miles, but everything after that is going to be completely brand new. So yeah, I think that the sleep stuff definitely was the thing that plagued me the most on the weeks leading up. And I do pretty well with being able to fall right asleep. If I lay down, I conk out pretty fast. My wife always gets mad at me because she has trouble sleeping, and she always, when we go to bed at night, she always looks over at me and wants to just kick me for being able to go to bed that early. She's just sitting there tossing and turning. But yeah, the sleep stuff, I had initially going into the race plans to sleep 2 times for about an hour each time. And after the first nap, things just kind of went haywire. And yeah.
When was the first time that you decided, like, okay, I need rest? And what were those pointers that made you get to that point?
Yeah, I think the plan was to try to sleep on the first night for about an hour. And I wanted to sleep towards the end of the night. That way, when I was waking up, the sun was going to be coming up. That's what I had heard people's plans were in the past and seemed to work for certain people. And looking back, I probably would have been better just to keep going through the night. I mean, I usually with 100 milers or 24-hour, I'm not usually all that super tired in 24 hours. So I probably would have done better just to go right through the night and maybe slept later on in the afternoon the following day. So, lots of little things that I learned like that.
Yeah, that's what as we dissect this ultra running phenomena, like 250, 240, the sleep deprivation is the thing. Like that's where people just don't experience it enough. And yeah, you can ask around, but everybody's different. Everybody adapts to it differently. But that is one thing that we've been hearing is getting your rhythm into the day, the morning, like waking up in the morning and trying to continue on throughout the day, like sleep when you can. When you have a hard plan, you try to stick to it. Sometimes people are trying to force sleep they become restless and then they become agitated and then they're like, I got to keep moving. And then they're in a disrupted mental state.
Yeah. I had ended up having some really bad chest congestion after the first day. We never really figured out exactly what it was. People were saying it was the dust. I've heard people saying that there might have been some kind of pollen in the air the first day. I had never experienced anything like that during a race. And so basically after the first night, my chest got really congested and I couldn't take in a really deep breath without having to cough and I had a really bad wheeze the following days after that. So, looking back at my race, I think that probably had the biggest, setback. And I mean, that's the biggest reason why I want to go back next year is to see if we can get rid of that, see how much better I could have done. A lot of the sleep that I did take throughout the race was trying to mitigate some of that chest congestion, trying to sleep, to get it out of my system. There was a few times where it did help and I was able to get rid of some of the congestion. But I mean, looking back now, I think had I not had that, I probably could have slept a lot less and just powered through it. Cause getting woken up after an hour nap it's one of the most brutal things in the world because you just do not want to get up. So I always dreaded laying down, just knowing that I was going to be having to get back up and get moving again afterwards. So it was rough.
We were recently talking, I can't remember if it was Hannah Hoopman or Emily Ketty, but we were asking about sleep deprivation and they were saying like, it's nothing that they practice because it's actually not good for you. Right. So like you don't want to practice it. So for most, and I don't know if you heard the same thing, like you don't really want to practice it. It's like, you're just you have a plan, but you're kind of just figuring it out and learning how your body, and I'm sure you learned a lot about that, how your body is responding, to sleep deprivation. And I would think that that's something, like you just said, going back next year, that maybe you're a little bit more cued into how your body responds to it.
Yeah, I mean, I had initially taken this first year of Cocodona as mostly being just a learning experience. I did have very lofty goals, just looking at past years, and yeah, I don't look at my race as a major failure. Yes, I did fail in some aspects of it, but it was more of a learning experience. And yeah, it just makes me even more excited to go back next year.
So when you do 250 miles, like what is that on the body? Did you walk away with pretty much limited or no strain in the body? Or did you have anything that was lingering afterwards when you go that long?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty surprised to see how fast I was able to get back to running. I did have some pretty bad blisters on my heels, but looking back, all of the races where I ended up hiking at the end of it, I seemed like I bounced back more. And I would say that I probably hiked 80 to 85% of Cocodona, which I was not prepared to do. Whether or not the chest thing had anything to do with that, I'm sure it probably did have a lot to do with it, but had I run more, maybe I would have been more fatigued. But yeah, I think it's more the mental side recovery after one of these longer races, more rather than the physical side. So yeah, I definitely had brain fog going back to work that following Monday and was taking naps on all of my breaks and just not feeling mentally all there. So
tell us about some magical moments, because I know they were there as well.
Yeah, I had, when I initially finished the race, I told my friend who had also finished just ahead of me, like, I think I had more bad down moments than I did good moments during the race. But as time went by and I started to think about all the crazy, situations I got into, the one that stuck out to me the most, and I'm actually, a little bit grateful that I did have some of the chest congestions because it did slow me down, was going into Sedona. Most of the people who were, running well, they don't see Sedona during the day. They go through it at night. But since I was having to take more naps, things got pushed back. So I did get to go through Sedona, like right when the sun was coming up. And I had never been out there. I've, seen tons of pictures and all the videos. And it really is one of the most beautiful areas I've ever seen in my life. It's up there with like the Grand Canyon. It's just amazing. So that was one big moment. And then the last one that sticks out was getting to climb Mount Eldon at the very end. Mm-hmm. One of the guys that had been crewing for me all, the previous days, he, took on getting me up Eldon safely, which I was glad he was there. But we got to summit Eldon right when the sun was setting. So we got to look out over Flagstaff with all the city lights and see the sun go down. It was really, I was really glad I got to have that moment with him, just being able to go up there and do that together. So
Eldon's really cool. There's, you have like that meadow and then you can just see it's just looming, right? It's like, it's this beacon of like, you are almost done. Like right. As soon as you get over me, but what is that ascent like? Is it, I don't even know, like what's the vertical gain? Do you know anything around that, or is it technical or?
Yeah, I think it's about 2,000 or 3,000 feet from what I remember. And it's about 2.5 miles up, but it is definitely nothing I'd ever gone up that as technical as that. Big chunky rocks, lots of switchbacks. There was a few sections that we got off trail because it was just, you didn't know which way to go. I was glad we actually got to go up that as the sun was going down and not completely in the dark, because it would have been twice as hard. But yeah, I mean, you've already run, I think it's 242 miles to that point and been so tired, and then you have to go up this steep climb. And I was actually telling my friend who was with me, I said, people have got to be the strangest creatures. Like, why would you look at this mountain and say, I need to get to the top of that thing? Like, what's wrong with where we are right now? But for whatever reason, we have to go and see what's at the top. And yeah, it was a grind. One of the runners who was looking fantastic came up past me, and I turned around and I looked at my friend and I was just like, how is he able to go up that much faster than what I'm moving at? Because I am barely getting myself up these huge rocks, but he was just flying up. So it was amazing. But yeah, it's that's another thing that I'm going to take into next year. I need to find some place close by and just do repeats up that and get used to climbing that big of steps, because I was definitely not expecting it to be that technical.
Yeah, I mean, it's so great. It's just like, okay, you've gone 242 miles and let's go do this, 2,000 to 3,000 foot technical climb, which is, those kinds of things, like they make the experience, right? Were there any other, I'm sure there were, but anything else that sticks out about that course where you just kind of like shake your head and laugh? Like it's just kind of a universal joke that's even a part of this epic mileage that you need to conquer?
Yeah, I mean, everybody talks about the Jerome descent, which I didn't think was all that bad. It was actually the lead up climbing up to Jerome. There's a section called Fain Ranch that you go through. It's through these cow pastures, and it's like 5 or 6 miles, and you're climbing over these man-made wooden steps to get over the barbed wire that separate the properties. And it's just a very hardly even visible track that you run on, and there's small cactuses all hidden out through the grass, and hoof holes from the cows being out there, and gopher holes. And you would, on paper, it looks like, this will be the easiest section to run across, but it's the exact opposite. You're constantly having to look and constantly having to find the flags to see which direction, and it winds all over the place. And if there was any part of that course that I would never want to do again, it's that section. But yeah, it's just a pain. But when you're connecting, I don't even know how many cities, 9-10 cities from Black Canyon City all the way to Flagstaff, you got to figure out how to connect all that stuff. So, and that just happened to be one of the more terrible parts.
What keeps you going, like in those low moments? What keeps you from not quitting?
Well, looking back at this race in general, it was my crew. It was the fact that they had given up an entire week to come out and support me away from their jobs and their families. And I even told them there's several times where if they wouldn't have been there, I probably would have dropped out. whether or not that would actually happen, I don't know. But, I'd planned to be done in 70 hours, which was a little over or a little under 3 days. And it ended up being 90 hours before I finished. And, just the fact that they were out there supporting me. They were also shooting a kind of a documentary that they'll be releasing here in a little bit. Just showing my race. The fact that they were out there shooting all that, I didn't want to end the story with me not finishing. I wanted it to have a nice bow at the end and have me crossing that finish line. I mean, there are great documentaries of people, failing and not reaching their goals, but I wanted mine to be a good ending to the story. So that was another thing that kept me going.
What about the 24-hour races when it's not necessarily like there's an end? Well, there is an end, but you've got to accumulate miles. How do you flip to keep going? Because I haven't experienced that, and I have experience. I know you ran some marathons, so like point to point, like there's that. But this 24-hour thing, like what's engaging in the mind, or is it a numbing out or a focus?
Yeah, the timed races are, in my opinion, a lot harder than the mileage, where you just need to get to this mileage, because the clock doesn't stop until it's done. And you have to somehow figure out a way to trick your mind into thinking the miles don't really matter. It's if you're moving the entire time. Those timed races, like 24-hour races, I like to break them up similar to how you would break up a 100-mile race or a distance race where you're just running from aid station to aid station. I like to break it up in different increments of hours. Usually the 24-hour races that I do, we run them on a track, so we switch directions every 4 hours. So that's one thing to look forward to. And then you like play tricks with your mind in doing just the mileage markers. I ran a marathon. I ran 50K, 50 mile, 100K, 100 mile. The tricky thing is when you're in the middle of the night, those are usually the hardest miles, because most times I've already run 100 miles and it's just there's the 200K mark, which is kind of something to shoot for too. But yeah, I don't know. It's always been something that I've been like easy to wrap my brain around for whatever reason. You get some of those mountain pros on a track and they crumble, and you ask them why, and they always say, because there's just nothing, there's nowhere to take your mind off what you're doing. And for whatever reason, I've always just been able to tap into something where I just break it down lap to lap and somehow get through it all. I don't know. I get asked that question a lot, and I've yet to find a really good answer for it.
Well, it's probably flow, a sense of flow. There's probably some sense of ease in the disturbance that you've tapped into. And that's how come sometimes we can't explain it, just like, professional, like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, like they just do it because they're just in it. They're just in the flow. And I'm wondering, because you did do marathons before, have you gone, now that you've done this distance stuff, have you done any road marathons and applied the fitness and mental fortitude to that? Or is that?
No, not other than just for fun. I mean, right. I haven't trained for a road marathon like for a while. I don't even remember. I think probably the last one I did was maybe 2017 when I did Boston one of the times. But I've always been curious to see how fast I could run one now. I mean, I've definitely slowed down just from running all of these longer races for sure. But then like marathon training it seems so much harder than ultra training for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just the speed work you have to put in, and it's just running. I did a 1 mile race followed by a 5K race earlier this year, and you finish those 5Ks and you just feel so much more in pain, and it was just, I don't know. I'd rather just run 100 miles, I guess, which is strange to say.
So during, let's wrapping it back to Cocodona, nutritionally, was there anything that I'm sure you went in with a plan, this is what I'm going to eat, blah, 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 blah. But was there anything that like you found like, oh my gosh, like if I didn't have this, like that thing was, or tell us a little bit about the nutritional experience with a body that is, under so much stress. And And, not to forget that our digestion is like rest and digest, right? It's the
Right.
slowing down nervous system, but you're just going, and we're trying to eat and absorb.
Yeah, I kind of blew it with the nutrition stuff too. I had seen a lot of people say take the time at the aid stations. You have plenty of time. Make sure you eat as many calories as you can at the aid station, because the distances in between each of those aid stations is so much greater than your typical 100-miler or 50-miler. And I did try to do that, but I think I underestimated how important that was. I think I was probably calorically deficient for most of the race because I wasn't taking in enough calories. And I don't think I figured that out until the last day, where I was actually taking, one of the things that I was, ate quite a bit was just peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They would just cut them in half and stick them in a baggie. So I could stick 3 or 4 of those in my pack and just bring them out there with me. And then later on, towards the end of that last day, I was taking these little, 2 or 3 inch breakfast burritos. I was just enjoying those so much. So yeah, next year I'll probably rely a lot less on the gels and the smaller caloric things, and just carry more bulky actual foods that had a lot of calories in them, and just try to get in as much as I can. Because yes, you are moving at such a slow rate that your body is actually able to process that stuff, where a typical 100-miler, I'm going into an aid station, grabbing a couple bottles and a couple gels, and then moving on to the next one, knowing that I was only probably an hour to 2 hours away from the next aid station. So yeah, just that was another one of those little things that I definitely need to work on more for next year.
Well, ultras definitely have great aid stations. Can you tell us a little bit about the buffet that is available at Cocodona?
Yeah, I mean, Aravaipa, all of their races, they always have so much food, and they had released a pretty intensive list of what each one of the aid stations was going to have. And I really wish I would have just stayed a little bit longer and eaten. One of the aid stations, I think it was Munn's, they had lasagna, and I ended up eating two plates of that. And yeah, I mean, they had a taco bar at one of them, and just stuff during a race, you're thinking, I don't want to waste any time sitting here making food, but it's just so important to get as much calories in as possible. And yeah, Aravaipa, I think they set the standard for every other race in the country. I mean, it's just unbelievable how much food they provide for everybody. Vegan options and gluten-free options. It's amazing. They always do a great job.
Yeah, they just set the bar so high. I mean, they've definitely set the bar so high on the streaming aspect. It's just amazing. We were all glued for days, watching this race unfold. But you mentioned that you learned so much about yourself. What was something, after all these miles on the trails that you've put in over the years, what was something that you took away from Cocodona that either reinforced or something new that you learned about yourself?
I think the biggest thing was just the low spots that, there was one night where it was 20 degrees and we had a headwind, and there was nobody around me. I couldn't see any headlights behind me or in front of me. And I was so cold that I thought I was just going to fall off the trail and just curl into a ball and just wait for somebody to come and get me. But I knew that by doing that, I was not going to get any closer to where I wanted to be. And so, it's just that mental fortitude or whatever it is to just keep going. I don't want to make it sound as dramatic as it being like a life or death kind of situation, but I had never been in that kind of a low in a race before. And, you're basically staring down at the ground at your headlamp, falling asleep and hallucinating and just not knowing how much further. I look back at that section I was in. The section was only 5 miles long, but it took me forever, it seemed like, to get there. And, I think putting yourself in those kind of situations and getting through them, they're only going to make you that much stronger for the next race. I mean, I like you had said, I did a 12-hour race 2 weeks ago, and there was so many times where I was like, oh my God, this is only 12 hours. Like I was out at Cocodona for 90 hours. That's nothing. You might feel terrible now, but I distinctly remember being in some of those hard situations in Cocodona and getting through them. So it just makes, it doesn't make life easier in any ways, but you just know you can get through some of those harder situations because of the things you've done in the past.
Yeah, life is going to be challenging always. Those things aren't going to stop. And, there are so many times when life will throw you a mountain or an obstacle. And it's like, there is that part of us that's like, I just want to curl up and pull the covers up and pull the shades and not deal with this. But I think that that's what endurance sports and ultra endurance sports really, man, it's such a gift to the athletes that stay the course because you do build that amount of fortitude that you can get through it. And then of course, when you're sharing the course with so many people, it's like everybody else that got to that finish line, they also got, they also moved those mountains. And that becomes a part of who you are as a person that navigates this world. And you don't know how that's going to pay forward to somebody in the future that may be having a really low time in their life, that maybe either they're inspired by seeing you, your shares on Instagram, or they hear about you, or there's somebody close in your circle. But I think those moments, as hard as they are, to keep moving forward, hands to the plow, as our guide always tells us, hands to the plow, you guys, like just keep going, like no complaining, no nothing, like just get up and keep going. They're such gifts and they're so hard in the moment. But I think that's another thing I love about ultra running too. It's like, you're in the middle of the night, you can't see anybody behind you, nobody in front, nobody's coming to get you, Jake.
Right.
Like you got to get yourself out of there. You can roll up in a ball, but like you're eventually going to have to unroll yourself and keep moving forward.
Yeah. I love telling the guys at my work, I get up and run, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I tell them that 2 hours that I'm out there running, that's usually the hardest thing I do all day. And if I don't do that in the morning, it kind of sets the stage for the rest of my day. There's really nothing that happens for the rest of the day that was as hard as getting up at that time and going out and running. So it just makes the whole rest of your day that much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. That reframe. I love that. And talking about the life and death out there, like it's almost a decision in that moment that is a life and death decision in terms of who you are as an athlete. At least what I've experienced, like you butt up against, well, I'm giving up now. When will I stop giving up? And maybe I don't even like this sport. And then you hang up the running shoes and you never come back. So it's like we owe it to ourselves in those moments to kind of seek what's possible, as uncomfortable as it is, like as devastating as it could be, because the mind will go there and say like, oh, this is going to be atrocious. But instead it's like, we really just need to keep moving forward. And that's so important in strengthening that mindset, the willpower to continually pursue the next thing and the next thing. And to really go 2 weeks after Cocodona, like looking at it in the endurance world, like that, all that fitness in those 2 weeks that led into the next is all like soaking into your system, as fatigued and tired and brain fog as you were. That's all like getting into your bones and your muscles so that you could have that amazing experience 2 weeks later. But you got to put yourself in the opportunity to race like that.
Right. And I think that's why I continually do it. It's almost like I'm looking for the breaking point. And I mean, I don't want to say, breaking a bone or something like that, but I think most people in generally don't give themselves credit for the things that they accomplish. And if you kind of just settle on being happy the way you are, I guess in some ways that's a good thing. But I think I'm just always searching for that point of where, okay, I've done too much. And I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the times that results in an injury, but for whatever reason, I've been able to just keep going. And yeah, I think that's the exploration of just how far we can go is the thing that keeps me going.
And you also talked about on this like piece of recovery, like limiting carbohydrates, I believe, in like the day. And I'm really curious about how that affects the longevity that you've been able to be in the sport without, major injury that you just mentioned. And also, like, what other things have you looked for, like, uncovered that have worked well for you, like heat or cold or yoga or whatever? Like, what are these things that you're doing that maybe we can apply in our own athletic careers?
Yeah, I think besides the low carb thing after 2 days after the races, I definitely like getting in the sauna or just getting a really hot bath with some Epsom salt and soaking for a while. There's all kinds of science, longevity studies that have been done that say that, that's a great way to recover. I do stretch quite a bit the days leading after. And I think just trying to be as active as you can, not just plot yourself down on the couch, I think it sucks the first couple of days afterwards, even just getting out and going for a short walk. You definitely don't want to do that. But I think people use this, the quote, motion is lotion. And I definitely think that that's the way to go with a lot of this recovery stuff. It's just not sitting, letting your muscles get tight, letting your tendons get all tight. You twist your ankle. Sometimes the best thing to do is to try to run on it afterwards to loosen everything up, depending on how bad it is. And I definitely think that there's something to that, just to keeping it movement and getting the blood in some of those joints is probably the biggest thing I try to abide by.
How do you get creative at driving the truck? I'm curious, like if you have to get back to work the day after or a few days after a race, how do you manage that?
That's always the tricky thing. You climb up and down out of that tractor, and it's definitely not fun. I'm lucky that I don't have to sit for too long in between my stops. I do a lot of local stops throughout the day. So it's basically just a lot of, driving to a stop and then getting out and trying to stand or walk around afterwards. Just like I said, just trying to keep that movement going. So yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones that doesn't have to drive clear across the state or something. That would be probably miserable for me.
Totally agree with the movement, whatever that movement looks like as a part of recovery, walking or swimming. Something that, our lymph system, which actually is a big part of our, recovery, like with injury, it carries bigger waste and proteins that our bloodstream can't carry. And that lymph system is activated through muscle pump, through movement. So it is so important not to just plop yourself down on the couch like, oh, that just sounds so painful to me. So 2 weeks after Cocodona, which your final finish time was 89 hours, 29 minutes and 53 seconds. Just unbelievable accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then you went on to win the Nanny Goat 12-hour just 2 weeks later. And now you're days away from the San Diego 100. So in reflection, anything that you're taking from the Cocodona and saying, okay, we're going to use this at San Diego, or I've got this now for my mental fortitude to do this 100-miler?
I think that the one big takeaway is going to be those long runnable miles. Just knowing that I did a lot of that at Cocodona, where it's just, you're wasting time by hiking this stuff. And San Diego 100 it's most of the elevation gain is done during the first half of it. So once that's done, it's just kind of rolling hills the rest of the way. And I know there's going to be times where you're not going to want to run up some of those easier hills, but I think after doing Cocodona and forcing yourself to run when you don't really want to, it's going to make it that much easier for the second half of San Diego. And, like I said before, when you're out there for almost 90 hours at a race, when you look at 100 miles and, I don't know what my finish time is going to be, but it's definitely not going to be, 2 days or whatever. It just kind of reframes the whole, you don't really have that far to go. Just keep running. You're not going to be out. You're not going to have to lay down and sleep at any point. So yeah, just get through it. Faster you move, the faster you get to the finish line. So
Yeah, that's an incredible perspective to have being, having this 250 under your belt. And by linking it up so quickly to like a 12-hour and 100-miler, because it's still fresh, right? It's still fresh. Like over time, we'll have those memories and like, yeah, I did the 250, but right now it's still pretty potent, in your system. Like, oh yeah, I can still remember what all that feels like. What makes San Diego 100 a success for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's been a race that I've been wanting to do for several years. And when my wife asked me, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I told her I want to run 100 miles the week of my birthday. She thought I was crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's funny. I was looking at some of my old pictures. I ran the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon 12 years ago today, on my birthday. It was my first marathon, longest distance I had ever run. And to think that, 12 years later, I'd be running the 100-miler out there is pretty special. Hopefully I'm looking at the entrance list. I think I'm third on the list. So hopefully I'll podium. If not, I'm just looking to go out there and see the new course that they have set up for us and have fun with quite a few people that were actually running Cocodona too. So it'd be nice to reminisce a little bit.
Is this part of Western States? Is this a qualification or?
I don't think I might be. I don't know. I got my qualification at Black Canyon this year, so I'm not really too worried about that. So yeah, it's just have a week of vacation and go run 100 miles.
Have you done Western States before?
I have not. I've been in the lottery for 5 years now. So I'm kind of worried that I'm actually going to get picked for next year and I'll have a Cocodona Western States double on my hands. So yeah.
Well, you're the one to prove that it can be done.
Yeah.
Sure.
So are you doing Western States this year?
No. I may be going out there to help crew a friend if he needs it. I would love to go out there. I've not been out there during that week, so it'd be really cool to go out there and be a part of it. So we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. So you say like, oh, like that would be like the worst, like Cocodona and then Western States, but tell us really about how you feel about that. Would that be pretty awesome?
Yeah, it would be. It's just, the financial side of it, it's two very big races. And I'm also trying to make the 24-hour world championship team for next year. So I may have 3 big races going on next year if I end up making the team. So lots of overtime I'm going to be working coming up. Yep.
We know how that feels. We're like, oh God, we need like a whole year to just recover from like what just happened. It's like you want to qualify for these things and then you do and you're like, oh, okay, like here's another whatever, $5,000.
Yeah. It's wild.
So is there a dream? Is there like how do you balance like staying in the moment and like the things that, the San Diego 100, but also like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And maybe you're running it with your kids. Maybe you're crushing a race with your wife. Like, where do you see things going if you've looked that far?
Yeah. 10 years. Wow. I think my biggest dream, or the one that I'm trying to pursue the most right now, is just making that 24-hour team. Every opportunity. I've had, pretty good luck getting on the team the past 2 times. Well, 3 times, because 1 year was canceled because of COVID. But I think that's something that I should be able to pursue for at least the next couple cycles. But I'm definitely intrigued with these 200+ mile races. I think they're probably once I get some of these little kinks worked out, I think that's something I could probably be really good at doing. I love going and running new races and new places. I think that's a big key to longevity. There are the local races like Nanny Goat that I'll do every year, but I've gotten to see so many cool places just through running that it's hard not to want to just keep exploring the world. And so, yeah.
Is UTMB on your radar at all ever?
It is, but it's, another one of those high dollar kind of big, long vacation kind of deals. I would love to go out there someday and just do it over the course of 3 or 4 days to get to see the entire course during the daylight. I think that would be a lot more fun than actually running the race, a lot less stressful. And that would be something that actually my wife and I could do sometimes. So, yeah.
All right.
And what are the birthday plans?
Yeah,
for the rest of the day? You're grinding all day here.
Nothing special. You know, my daughter's at school right now, and my wife and boys are doing their jobs, and we're going to go out to dinner tonight. It's, you know, we don't make too big a deals out of our birthdays anymore. It's kind of just relaxing, getting ready for the big race on Friday. So.
Yeah, you're getting to that point where people then like congratulate you. Congratulations, you've made it another year. Because, you know, you're not 25 years old. I believe you turned 47 today. Yeah. So any words for anyone who says, oh, you know, I'd really love to do that, but, you know, I'm 42 or I'm 37 or I'm 55 and, you know, I don't know if I can do it. Like, what do you have to say to that to kind of shake them out of that mindset?
I say that's a bunch of bullshit, honestly. I mean,
perfect.
I've done more in my 40s than I did in my, you know, the previous 3 decades. So it's just a limit you put on yourself. If you don't put those limits on yourself, then you can accomplish all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I hear that stuff from a lot of my coworkers, and I say, you know, just take a look at what I've done. Like, I didn't start where I am now. It took years to get to this point, but yeah, no excuses.
Yeah, I love that. And it's you know, it's not just for you, it's for everyone. It's not just for us, it's for everyone, you know, and we agree with that, you know, we can just kind of put ourselves in a box really easily, based on society and, you know, just belief systems that were formed a very long time ago. But that's why we appreciate people like you bringing you on the show, that are just, you know, hands to the plow, keep moving forward, and let's see what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. My kids, you know, they always tell me all their excuses for not doing things. And I say, hey, you're talking to the wrong person. You're talking to the wrong person.
I love that. Awesome. Jake, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. It was great chatting with you. I appreciate everything that you've shared, and I know our community will take a lot away from it.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation with you guys.